Hey, what's up, guys? Hello, so Footballtalk here. We're back with another weekly recap with a lot of playoff implications shifted in this one in particular. We had a Christmas Day game, so we've finally completed the task of having an NFL game every day of the week, even though we kind of started and ended the week with butt whoopings. However, there were a lot of competitive games on Sunday, and we're set up for a crazy close to the regular season. I hope everybody had a great Christmas and won the fantasy championships, which probably included not having to play against Alvin Kamara or Devontae Adams. I personally won my two main leagues, but barely lost in the other one, thanks to a ridiculous performance from freaking Michael Gallup, costing me a perfect sweep. But now let's get into the slate. And like I said, we're going to start with the Christmas Day game with the Minnesota Vikings at the New Orleans Saints. A game with a lot of history in recent years, especially in the playoffs, that mostly didn't go in the Saints' favor. However, they got them back big time here, and now the Vikings are knocked out of the playoff picture. On a day where we saw 85 combined points scored, and the Saints putting 52 on their opponents, which was the most allowed by a Vikings team in like 57 years, I believe. I thought it was funny that on the broadcast, they talked about how Kirk Cousins would have to keep pace with Drew Brees, when he was actually the only thing that kept Minnesota in the game through three quarters, throwing picks at the end of the first half and at the start of the second. Even though the latter one was more on Emmanuel Sanders, with the ball go off the end of his reach and into the hands of Hardy Nickerson, after Brees already threw it behind Jared Cook on a sail concept, where the tight end also drifted a little too far upfield early in the first half. The star of the show was clearly Alvin Kamara, who racked up 172 total yards on his 25 touches and tied Ernie Nevers' record from 1929 with 6 rushing touchdowns. Every time he got the ball handed to him, it seemed like AK was ripping off at least 8 yards, and the Saints really only ran duo and split zone with him. Brees didn't have a bad game, but New Orleans really tore apart this depleted front seven for the Vikings that was missing Eric Kendricks in the middle and had an undrafted free agent in Blake Lynch start for them after he had only played one defensive snap all season long to that point. Latavius Murray was averaging 6 yards a pop on his 12 carries, and they got a couple of key conversions in short yardage situations from Taysom Hill. Early on, it looked like Dalvin Cook might have a big day as well, with Minnesota driving right down the field on their opening possession, and Cousins had quite a bit of success with the underneath passing game, heavily featuring his two tight ends, with Irv Smith catching a couple of touchdowns on the way. But outside of the 2 interceptions for Brees, the Saints scored on every other drive up to the game-sealing kneel downs, and all but one of them were touchdowns, while the Vikings only punted 4 times themselves, but with Mike Zimmer's defense not being able to create any stops, they still lost by 3 possessions. New Orleans didn't allow a single sack on Brees, and they picked up 21 first downs on the ground alone. You would have liked to see that defense show up in a little more dominant fashion, but to see them put a 50 burger on a team that needed to win this game in order to stay alive in the playoff hunt, that's definitely encouraging. And if Brees can continue to get back to 100%, this team might be the most complete heading into the playoffs. And since we're talking about butt whoopings, how about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Detroit Lions? This was an absolute annihilation by the Bucs, who outgained their opponents by 400 yards and held them to 1 of 10 combined on 3rd and 4th downs. The Lions also turned it over twice and committed 11 penalties for 117 yards. Tampa actually was about to start the day 3 and out, but thanks to an offside penalty, that opening drive was extended, and it ended in a 33-yard touchdown for Gronk on a fade route a few plays later. The Lions' first possession ended with a punt just short of midfield after they got called for a false start on a 4th and 1 attempt, and from that point on, a hobbled Matt Stafford was replaced by Chase Daniel. Tom Brady put on an absolute clinic in that first half, throwing darts all over the field, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin covering up that inexperienced Detroit secondary, while Daniel was inaccurate on plenty of his throws, which even got him benched for David Blau in the 4th quarter, and the Lions could barely keep their run game involved. Not like they had much success when they did anyway, but a few flashes from DeAndre Swift was really the only thing that they had on the day, putting the Bucs up 34-0 at halftime, and Jason Pierre-Paul almost got another interception, dropping into the hook zone. And on the second play of the halftime, DeAndre Swift had the ball ripped up by Lavonte David whilst going to the ground, and Blaine Gabbert threw another touchdown to Gronk right down the seams from 25 yards away, as Brady didn't even play a single snap for the final 30 minutes, and I could not believe it for my 2 main fantasy teams, even if 30 points wasn't too shabby already, but also had Josh Allen on the bench in both of those leagues. And after Jamal Agnew delivered the only points for the Lions on a 74-yard punt return touchdown, before the Bucs got another easy touchdown to Big Mike 8 minutes into the second half, we didn't see any more points, and the final score was 47-7. Free Matt Stafford. He does not deserve this mess. And I said it before, there's no quick fix for this situation. Let's hope the Lions realize that they need to blow this whole thing up and give their next head coach and GM all the time and resources they need to build this thing up from the ground. For the Bucs, they have now clinched a playoff berth, and it was obviously all in the Lions, but watch out NFC. Just like I said with the Saints, they have a case for being the most complete team in the conference. Thankfully, we had two other games that were much more competitive on Saturday still. First up with the San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals, an NFC West battle where the 49ers really had nothing to play for, and the Cardinals desperately needed this game to stay on pace for a playoff spot. The Cardinals drove right down the field without really any issues on the opening possession, but only came away with 3 points, even though on 3rd and goal, I felt like one of the Niners safeties should have been penalized for an illegal hit to the head. And when the Niners got the ball a second time, they put together an impressive drive with a heavy load of Jeff Wilson, who also came up with a touchdown by cutting across the field after catching it over the middle from 21 yards away. However, the only other point scored in the half came on an Arizona field goal with about half a minute left, as San Francisco did a great job of keeping Kyler Murray in the pocket and contesting passes at the catch point. He still made a few of his plays like he always does, like running away from an unblocked defender to convert a 4th down, but in general, they held him and DeAndre Hopkins in check, with Jason Verrett doing a great job of sticking to Arizona's top receiver, while the Niners did have plenty of success running the ball with Wilson as the primary back, with a lot of powers and traps before attacking the edges with toss plays later on. And one of my favorite plays I've seen, one of many actually for fullback Kyle Juszczyk, where they motioned him around and he ended up under center from where he just ran a sneak to easily convert a 3rd and short. But when they got behind the chains, CJ Beathard couldn't really overcome it through the air, although you can't fault him for not showing any effort, whether it was taking a big hit at the end of a keeper or lead blocking on a reverse play. He at least took care of the ball, unlike Nick Mullins for several weeks now. And the 49ers put together an impressive opening drive in the second half, with almost all of it coming on the ground. But Robbie Gould missed a 41-yard field goal at the end of it, before getting chunk plays from Wilson and George Kittle, who looked like his usual self with physical running after the catch, to go with a crucial 3rd and 10 conversion by Jerick McKinnon on a catch in the flats, and then Juszczyk scoring from 9 yards away on the other side, while the Cardinals started with a 3 and out, and then Dan Arnold had the ball punched out and recovered by Fred Warner on the very next play. San Francisco had to punt just outside field goal range after that, and it looked like that defense quickly had gotten another stop, with Fred Warner almost getting a pick, carrying a receiver down the seams, which he was doing all game long. Yet Arizona went for it, and Kyler took off right up the middle, before on 2nd and 23, the Cardinals quarterback connected with Keyshawn Johnson down the middle for 45 yards, and then Kenyon Drake ultimately finished off the drive by leaping over the pile at the goal line, even though a back shoulder fade to D-Hop on the 2-point try was too low. The Niners went 3 and out, and the Cardinals were about to punt as well, but even though they had been 3 of 3 and 4th downs, they made another very aggressive call to go for it from their own 35, which Fred Warner knocked down a slant to D-Hop, and Jeff Wilson ran down to the opposing 1 at the very next snap, before Beathard flipped it to his wide open fullback in the flats off play action right after, with another PAT hooked actually, to keep this a 1-score difference at 20-12. Kyler picked up another 4th and short by taking off around the right edge for a big gain, but then he was picked off on an underthrown go ball in the end zone off his back foot by Kittle Witherspoon, and the Niners continued to get chunk plays from Wilson and Kittle, ultimately setting up a 37-yard field goal with a minute left. But again, Robbie Gould hooked the kick, this time to the left, giving Arizona another shot at it. But thankfully the San Fran defense was able to stop them after 1 first down. And what an impressive showing it was by that Niner defense. Kyler did everything he could by accounting for all but 45 of Arizona's 350 total yards, but being limited to 4.3 yards per pass and only allowing a quarter of the 3rd downs to be converted, as well as only 1 of the 3 red zone trips resulting in a touchdown. San Francisco's run game was highly impressive as well, and Kyle Shanahan schemed the Cardinals to death really. The only thing that kept the home team in the game was 49ers kicker Robbie Gould, who missed a couple of pretty easy field goals and a PAT. And the nightcap was the Miami Dolphins at the Las Vegas Raiders, 2 AFC teams trying to stay alive in playoff contention. Both teams started the day with 3 and outs, before Hunter Renfrow returned a punt into Miami territory, and a couple of minutes later, Derek Carr went over the pile at the goal line for our game's first 7 points. The Dolphins put together a good-looking drive after that inside the red zone, but had to settle for 3, before the Raiders relied heavily on Josh Jacobs, slicing through creases in the run game to get them into the red zone on the next possession. And then on a 3rd and 19, Jalen Richard got all but a couple of inches of it back on a draw play, which they were able to extend the drive with a handoff up the middle, but ultimately only got a chip shot field goal out of it. On the very next snap, Tua would have been picked off by Nevin Lawson if not for Mike Gesicki coming over the top and knocking the ball out. Before, when they got to 4th and 1 from the 50, their up back Clayton Fetchelum ran a punt fake and spun off the initial hit at the line for a big play, which set up another field goal for them. And Vegas added 3 more themselves after a couple of big catches for Darren Waller to send us to halftime with a score of 13-6 for the Silver and Black. However, 2 plays into the second half, Myles Gaskin ripped off a big run to get the Dolphins into opposing territory before feeding Jakeem Grant a couple of times and then going back to Gaskin for a 10-yard touchdown on a running back screen. And then when the Raiders were just short of midfield and faced a 4th and 1, the Miami defense stuffed a Josh Jacobs run. Yet a Candlewick sack on the ensuing 3rd down, with Arden Key forcing Tua to step up into the arms of his teammate, forced a punt for the Dolphins, and a one-handed grab on a fade ball from Darren Waller got the Silver and Black back into the red zone, leading to another chip shot kick to put Vegas up by 3 again. Plus, after Miami 3 and out, Waller made another sick catch at the sideline through contact to get the Raiders just short of the 50 to start the 4th quarter, even though they had to punt after that, and we would see another 3 and out for both teams, before the Dolphins decided to put in Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback again for the final 10 minutes, and he took Miami right down the field with a perfect ball down the seams, right in front of the Tampa 2 linebacker to his tight end, which set up a 1st and goal, and they would tie the game at 16 on a field goal with about 4 minutes left. But after holding call initially set them back, Derek Carr lofted it for Nelson Aguilar down the field whilst on the run, who made the safety look bad on the back end of it for an 85-yard touchdown. But Daniel Carlson would miss the extra point, which would prove to be crucial in the end, because a couple of plays later, Fitzy hit Gaskin on a square end from an empty set, and he bounced off the initial hit and cut back to the sideline with a great peel back block from McCollins bringing him loose for a 59-yard score. And then on a snap right after that for Vegas, Kyle let one fly for Aguilar on a deep post, which Byron Jones seemed to be in great position for, but got flagged for it and set the Raiders up just short of the red zone already again, as they actively tried to stay out of the end zone and set up an easy field goal to go back up by 2 with 19 seconds remaining, which was a little odd they didn't take the touchdown there. And with no timeouts left for Miami, Fitzy on the very next snap made one of the all-time great plays I've ever seen, delivering a pass to Matt Collins at the sideline whilst getting his face mask yanked to the side, as the corner over there for some reason allowed the receiver to release outside and didn't trail him down the field in cover 2, which that, plus the penalty, set up Jason Sanders' game-winning 44-yard field goal with a couple of seconds remaining. What a wild finish this was. The Dolphins keep control of their play of destiny, with a meeting with Buffalo at hand, while the Raiders are now officially eliminated from playoff contention. But while it always seems to be the right move, I'm not sure what this does to Tua psychologically to pull him out of the game in those big spots, because he didn't really do anything wrong, just didn't deliver any dynamic plays downfield, and he needs to get those opportunities to grow as a player. But now let's move on to the Sunday slate, with really the biggest game in the AFC here, as far as the playoff picture is concerned, the Indianapolis Colts at the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot was on the line this game, which I actually highlighted already all the way back in May, when I talked about the biggest game on the schedule, and how I didn't really understand how this was a 1 p.m. kickoff. Not that I knew exactly what was going on, but just looking at the matchup in particular. Because the Steelers could secure the AFC North with this win, and the Colts could have put themselves in position to win the South next week, but are now actually out of the playoff picture at the moment. And the tone for the first half of this game was set right away, as the Steelers started with a 3 and out, and the Colts drove right down the field with a big catch and run for rookie wide receiver Michael Pittman, and 3 straight first downs after that, before Jonathan Taylor plowed in for a touchdown on 3rd and goal. And even though Pittsburgh only picked up 1 combined first down over the next 2 possessions, their defense gave them a chance to tie the game, as T.J. Watt strip-sacked Phillip Rivers, and Mike Hilton returned the ball all the way inside the Indy 5, which James Conner cashed in for a 1-yard touchdown 3 plays later. However, the Colts put together another long drive, with a heavy dose of the run game and a couple of big hookups with T.Y. Hilton, which Jonathan Taylor capped off with his 2nd touchdown from a yard away, and then Rivers beat the blitz with a 42-yard touchdown strike to Zach Pascal down the post. Plus, if not for guard Mark Lewinsky just extending his hands a little bit to draw a flag for a block in the back, when he was in great position and the refs could have probably still left this one uncalled, the Colts would have had another 1st and goal following a screen pass to Naheem Hines for almost 70 yards, while the Steelers only got 2 more first downs the rest of the half and finished it with just 74 total yards of offense, and the only points coming off a turnover on the doorsteps of the end zone, giving us a score of 21-3 at the break. and the Colts drove right back down the field all the way to the Pittsburgh 7 on the opening possession of the second half, with more success on the ground, but a Stephon Tuitt sack forced them to settle for 3, while the Steelers finally got into the red zone in the more typical fashion next, as Big Ben threw a strike to Chase Claypool on a post route, but despite having first and goal from the 1, it showed once again that they simply can't run the ball when they really need to, just like we saw earlier on the 3rd and inches, and the Colts defense was able to create a stop. However, with the offense of the Colts going 3 and out, Ray McLeod returned the ensuing punt all the way to the Indy 39, from where Big Ben hit Deontay Johnson for a long touchdown on a fade route, and that would be one of 3 straight touchdowns for the Steelers, as next, a couple of pass interference calls on more deep shots to Johnson set up a 5-yard touchdown for Eric Ebron on an out route. Then on the next possession, James Conner looked as fresh as we've seen all season long, and Pittsburgh got a couple of major breaks from the refs, as Claypool for some reason wasn't called for a late push-off that probably prevented a pick 6 for Rock Ya-Sin before the corner got flagged in that matchup for a ticky-tack hold, and then Roethlisberger lobbed the pass over the safety for Juju on a deep crosser for a 25-yard score. Those 3 touchdowns came in a matter of 10.5 minutes, and all of a sudden the Steelers were up 28-24, as Avery Williamson came up with a sack to force a 3 and out initially, and then Cam Hayward stopped the ensuing drive with a 3rd down sack, with the Colts getting away from the run game too much. And 3 plays later, Phillip Rivers overthrew Michael Pittman down the post, which resulted in an interception of Mike Hilton, and allowed the Steelers to take down the clock to about 2 minutes left, which after a couple of near interceptions, T.Y. Hilton got Indy to the Pittsburgh 35 on a deep out, but then on 4th and 7, a pass from Rivers went just off the hands of Zach Pascal to secure the Steelers the division title and take the Colts out of a win and you're in situation next week, as their last 5 possessions offensively ended in 3 punts, an interception, and a turnover on downs. If Big Ben can play more like he did in the second half of this game, the Steelers are still a very good team. You just hope for them that this game showed them that they have to throw the ball down the field and not just throw it short of the sticks on every other snap. Next up, another game that came down to the wire, kinda surprisingly, with the Atlanta Falcons at the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Falcons are just experts at finding ways to lose games. They did everything to win this game. Big plays through the air, they won the turnover battle, basically the same in first downs and total yards. A chance to make an interception in the end zone when they were up to almost seal the game, and then a chance to tie the score at the end anyway. The Falcons got a big gain on a wheel route to Todd Gurley on the first play from scrimmage just across the 50, but they had to punt from there, while the Chiefs got a couple of nice plays from Tyreek Hill on an end around and Travis Kelce on a slip screen, but they had to punt from the opposite side of the field as well. And both offenses moved the ball throughout the first half, but it took until 3.5 minutes left for our first points, as the Falcons went 98 yards, with Calvin Ridley racking up a good 50 after making his defender look foolish on a slant route, before Hayden Hurst scored on a shovel pass from a few yards away, as the Chiefs got a little too fancy on a trick play on 4th and 1, when they were already in scoring range, where he flipped it around a few times after doing that Super Bowl-like pirouette with 3 guys in the backfield, and that ended with Sammy Watkins launching a deep ball from Mahomes out the sideline, which was picked off by Keanu Neal at the Atlanta 2, before the Falcons went on a big drive. But the Chiefs answered with a big one of their own, with a couple of key scrambles from Mahomes and carries for Darrell Williams, before Mahomes threaded the needle to Travis Kelce on a hook route in between 3 defenders to tie things up at 7 with half a minute left until the break. And it felt like Kansas City was about to take control of this game, as they drove down inside the opposing 10 with ease, including Le'Veon Bell driving the pile and everybody on that offense seemingly pushing from behind for a good 10 yards. But then Patrick Mahomes with one of the worst decisions you will ever see from him, as he threw the ball right into the hands of the Falcons' biggest defensive playmaker all season long in Foyesade Oluokun, right over the middle, who looked like a running back on the return, and if not for Tyreek Hill making a DK Metcalf-like chase down tackle, which he actually claimed he wouldn't have to because of who his quarterback was back when that happened, Oluokun might have gone the distance, but instead the Chiefs' defense got back-to-back sacks from Frank Clark and Chris Jones to force a punt on that one. But neither offense could make anything happen when they got the ball next, before the Chiefs got their first lead of the day on a 53-yard field goal by Harrison Butker, a couple of plays after Mahomes was lucky that Sammy Watkins knocked the ball out of the hands of John Cominsky, who would have had an interception otherwise, thanks in large part to a late adjustment by Luke Stocker to turn himself into a target for his quarterback, but then rookie linebacker Willie Gay, who stepped into action due to some injuries among that group, knocked the ball out of the hands of Brandon Powell to get it right back. Yet great pursuit by Keanu Neal and a speed option Darrell Williams on the ensuing 3rd down forced another punt for KC, and Calvin Ridley was wide open on a deep crosser off a play-action Yankee concept to easily overcome the initial holding call, and after a couple of big gains for Brian Hill, Matt Ryan hit LaQuan Treadwell right at the goal line on a hook for a 5-yard score to go back out in front. But the Chiefs came back with a couple of big catch-and-run plays for Kelsey, before it seemed like for a second that rookie cornerback AJ Terrell had made a huge high-point interception in the end zone on a go ball intended for Tyreek Hill, but he lost the ball as he hit the ground, and we all knew right away that the Chiefs would score, which happened on the very next snap as DeMarcus Robinson gave his man a little lean to the outside before breaking back to the post for a 25-yard score just beyond the 2-minute warning. Now down 17-14 for Atlanta, a catch and hurl from Russell Gage and a sideline grab from Ridley got the Falcons just outside the red zone before Matt Ryan almost turned it over on consecutive plays, with Ridley having to play DB on a throw off Ryan's back foot in the latter one. And then Pro Bowl kicker Younghoe Koo, who had made 27 straight field goals, missed what for him is a routine kick from 39 yards away that would have sent us to overtime with only 14 seconds left. This secures the Chiefs the number 1 seed in the AFC, and the Falcons' curse strikes again. Atlanta was not afraid to blitz Mahomes, and they had plenty of success with it, with the Chiefs having an off day offensively, despite facing one of the worst pass defenses in the league. But one of these teams just knows how to win late, and the other one has excelled at losing those type of games for a long time now. The home team in this next game also scored 17 points, but unfortunately allowed 41 themselves, and I don't want to waste too much time on the Chicago Bears at the Jacksonville Jaguars, because I'm certainly not saying this about the players, but the organization as a whole didn't want to win this game, simply when you look at the fact that Gardner Minshew didn't start, while the Bears needed to win in order to stay alive in the playoff hunt. The Jags actually hung around early on, tying the score at 10 midway through the second quarter, with DJ Chark making most of the big plays for them and catching the touchdown over his corner, and Mitch Trubisky actually gave them a gift when he carelessly threw it up for grabs already in the red zone with half a minute left, which was picked off by Joe Schobert, but Mike Glennon gave it right back as Roquan Smith was underneath a deep in-breaking route and intercepted that one, and then Jacksonville basically surrendered the field goal by having everybody play way off and allowing an easy run after catch over the middle to make the halftime score 13-10 Bears. And then Chicago just overwhelmed the home team with heavy features for David Montgomery, who had 25 touches for 121 yards and a touchdown, and Allen Robinson, who caught 10 passes for 105, to go along with the second touchdown grab for Jimmy Graham, as the Bears scored in the first 4 possessions of the second half, with Mitch keeping the first one himself, while Jacksonville only picked up 3 more first downs over the final 30 minutes, with Mike Glennon looking lost back there, and them not even trying to run the ball, before a tremendous grab through contact by Laviska Shenault on a deep ball got the Jags another touchdown from 34 yards away to give us this final score. The Bears have now scored 30 plus points in 4 straight games. That's the first time they have done this since the days of George Halas and Gale Sayers, and they only scored 30 once before that all season long. They now control their own playoff destiny as they host the Packers next Sunday, while Jacksonville just clinched the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and I have to tell you, if they just hire the right people and get Trevor Lawrence in there to work with what is already a pretty talented roster, I could see them turn it around pretty quickly. Now let's move on to the Bengals at the Texans. If you want to see a lot of points, this game was definitely an option, but if you wanted to see 2 good teams in a game that had any meaning, you'd probably just watch the extended highlights afterwards, which is what I did. Believe it or not, these 2 teams combined for a week high 1,028 total yards, and only former Bengals quarterback Andy Dalton had more than Brandon Allen's 371 passing yards. Giovanni Bernard was absolutely killing the Texans defense with dump offs underneath, while Samaje Perine handled more of the running load and was bouncing off tackles all day long, including an incredible 46-yard touchdown, as those 2 combined for 267 scrimmage yards, while rookie wide receiver T. Higgins had himself a day as well, with just a yard short of the 100 mark, to include a 30-yard toe drag touchdown that I still don't understand how he kept both those feet in. The running back on the other side, and David Johnson, had his biggest game in a long time as well, as the only guy out of the backfield for the Texans, with 139 yards and 2 touchdowns on 15 touches, while Brandon Cooks was open all day long, catching 7 of 10 targets for 141 yards and the first touchdown of the game, and Deshaun Watson made some tremendous plays on scrambles, as he always does. And it's kind of crazy that the halftime score was only 10-10, because the second half started with 7 straight scoring drives, with all but one of them resulting in touchdowns, as these 2 squads really went tit for tat, never separated by more than one score, in a game where defense seemingly wasn't mandatory, even if Deshaun escaped the rush in magical fashion a few times, because that's just what he does, until with 1.5 minutes remaining and a score of 34-41, Sam Hubbard stripped Watson for the first sack of the day for either team, and the Bengals hit another field goal to make this a 6-point difference, and all the Texans had left was trying to make something happen on a lateral play, which was actually really fun to watch with a couple of offensive linemen touching the ball. This game really does nothing to any playoff or future implications, other than the Texans providing the Dolphins with a better pick due to the Laramie Tunsil trade, and that Deshaun Watson has even more proof now to demand some structure and a defense in Houston. An interconference game that certainly had much more to do with the playoff picture was the New York Giants at the Baltimore Ravens. While this in theory was only a 2-touchdown win for the Ravens, this game was never even close to being in doubt. Baltimore outrushed the opposition by about 200 yards, averaged 2 yards more per play, and possessed the ball more than 10 minutes longer. The Ravens scored in all 4 of the first half possessions, with touchdowns from Marquise Brown on a toe-tap catch off an over route from 6 yards out, and J.K. Dobbins running it in from 2 yards away, to go along with a couple of chip-shot field goals for Justin Tucker, as they ran the ball at will and Lamar Jackson picked apart his New York zone defense with a lot of underneath completions, and the O-line allowed him to stand back there forever it seemed like. The Giants on the other hand put together one long drive towards the end of the first half, with a lot of checkdowns and outlets, before Marlon Humphrey denied a touchdown over the middle and forced a field goal, and New York actually only possessed the ball 2 other times before that, and combined for 1 first down on those, sending us to the halftime with a score of 20-3 for Baltimore. And after quick stops for both teams after the break, the Giants scored 10 more points, with big catches down the seams for Wayne Gallman and Dante Pettis to set up the initial field goal, with the Ravens defense blowing up a throwback screen for Sterling Shepard, and the first career sack for Justin Madubuike, the rookie. However, J.K. Dobbins went off for a big run a couple of snaps later, and Baltimore answered with an 8-yard touchdown strike to a wide-open Des Bryant at the back of the end zone. And even though the Ravens forced another punt, thanks to 3 straight sacks and Daniel Jones, by Matt Judon, Pernell McPhee, and Chris Board, a roughing the kicker call allowed the Giants to keep things going, and Jones ultimately hit Sterling Shepard for a 2-yard touchdown on a pivot route. Yet the Ravens D forced another turnover on downs next, and even though there was an exchange problem between Lamar and his running back Gus Edwards at the goal line, they gave the Giants another chance after Edwards already made an incredible play to get them there, where he caught a pass at the sideline and then broke like 5 tackles. Baltimore didn't allow the G-Man to get past midfield anymore. Like I said, the score is pretty deceiving, because if not for a roughing the punter penalty and the fumble at the end, which was easily avoidable, as the Ravens were about to score again, the final score could have easily been 34-6. With the Colts' loss parallel to this game, all the Ravens have to do now is win next week at Cincinnati to secure a playoff spot, while the Giants actually still have a chance to win the NFC East due to Washington losing later on, which will all be decided inside the division, as first we will see the winner of the Giants and Cowboys get a chance to take home the crown before they actually have to root for the Eagles to beat the football team in the Sunday night game. But now let's get to the hottest team in all of football, the New York Jets, who have now won 2 straight after starting the year 0-13, while the Browns could not secure a playoff berth with the win, as they were without their top 4 receivers, 2 starting offensive linemen, and 2 linebackers each. Falling 3 and outs for both teams, Cleveland was first to score on a field goal after a big catch down the seams for Austin Hooper, but it took them until the final seconds of the first half to get another chance to add to it, when he put the punter Jamie Gillian out there to attempt a 61-yard field goal, which he couldn't knock in. While the Jets scored their 2 touchdowns in a matter of 2 minutes, as they first got a 44-yard score on a reverse pass from Jamison Crowder to Braxton Berrios, and after Frankie Louvu strip-sacked Baker Mayfield 2 plays later, Sam Darnold had his tight end Chris Herndon wide open on a slant for an 11-yard score. So Gangrene was up 13-3 at the break, with Sheldon Richardson blocking the PAT on the second touchdown, despite the only other time they got into opposing territory being when the defense allowed them to complete it short on a 3rd and forever, in large part because the Browns' top 3 rushing offense had just 4 yards on the ground through the first half, and the Browns added to the lead on the opening possession of the second half, as Jamison Crowder got 25 yards on a catch and run play off a mesh concept, and then was wide the hell open, releasing down the sideline out of a bunch for a 30-yard score, while the Browns started with a 3 and out and then extended the ensuing Jets possession with a roughing the kicker call and a punt from midfield. At least Cleveland was able to block the 50-yard field goal attempt, with Sheldon Richardson getting credit with Sheldon Richardson getting credit for a second block for the sea of hands on the interior, before the Browns finally were able to get into the end zone, with Nick Chubb punching it in from a yard away, following big gains on a screen pass to Chubb, and a nice back shoulder catch from Jamarcus Bradley, who he just called up from the practice squad, and I mentioned in one of my pre-draft write-ups. And after the defense forced the 3 and out, they drove down the field once more for a 4-yard Kareem Hunt touchdown, after a defensive pass interference call on the 3rd and long extended the possession. However, while the Browns defense was able to get 2 more stops around midfield, Baker was strip sacked from behind by Terrell Basham as he was trying to extend the play, and the Jets were able to set up a field goal to extend this to a touchdown difference. And even though New York helped the visitors with a kick out of bounds, and the Browns got all the way down to the opposing 15, on a 4th and inches sneak from Baker, he lost the ball whilst getting pulled back by Basham, giving the Jets their second victory against a double-digit win team in as many weeks. The Browns overall ran the ball 18 times for only 45 yards, and about a third of those came on one run for Chubb, while they got too much away from running the ball in early downs and staying ahead of the chains, and I don't want to hear anything from the analytics people here. The Jets converted 2 Baker fumbles into 10 points, and the drive extended by bad penalties and tackling by Cleveland, to go with a couple of key first down scrambles from Sam Darnold. After the Jets gave up the chance to draft Trevor Lawrence in April, they could at least end the season on a 3-game win streak and add more pieces to the puzzle if they decide to trade out of that second overall pick. Let's move on to the midday slate, first up with the Carolina Panthers and the Washington football team. The obvious storyline coming into this game was Ron Rivera hosting a team that fired him last December, but Dwayne Haskins also had a lot to prove after he got caught partying in a strip club with mascots after the game last Sunday, which is an absolute disgrace and at least cost him my respect for sure. And Washington had a chance to wrap up the NFC East with this win, but things just went a different way. The Panthers did a good job of working their way down the field with the quick passing game on the initial drive of the game, but then on 4th and 5 from the Washington 34, Teddy Bridgewater stumbled to the ground for a sack. However, Dwayne Haskins almost by himself handed Carolina this game in the first half, as he was strip sacked at the Carolina 30 next by Marquise Haynes, and after the first touchdown of the game came on a muff punt by Steven Sims that was recovered in the end zone by Brandon Zylstra, where the PAT was blocked afterwards. Haskins went 3 and out for a second time, and then was picked off twice, first by Tahir Whitehead, dropping underneath a deep crosser off play action, and then again by Dante Jackson, just throwing one up for grabs at the sideline, with a couple of seconds left in the half. After Bridgewater was actually picked off by Cameron Curl on a wobbler, where Chase Young could have almost been credited with a strip sack as well. While the Panthers put together consecutive touchdown drives before that, with Curtis Samuel bouncing outside on a simple handoff, breaking a tackle for a big gain, and then Mike Davis punching it in from a yard away. And after the Whitehead interception, Teddy hit a deep ball to Samuel again, before Robbie Anderson was wide open on a shallow crosser and scored from 15 yards away, making the halftime score 20-3. And Carolina took down 8 minutes of clock with a drive all the way inside the Washington 20 to start the second half, but then Chase Young made an enormous play of actually strip sacking Bridgewater and jumping on a loose ball himself. Before the ensuing third down, Dwayne Haskins just lollipopped the pass to Cam Sims at the sideline late, who the defense at that point had completely lost, and he went 50 yards on that one, which ultimately resulted in a chip shot field goal. A couple of big catches by DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel got the Panthers into opposing territory, but the Washington defense would be able to force a punt. Yet, after the football team got past the 50, Haskins was chased down by Yetur Gross-Matos and Zach Kerr for a sack to turn the ball over on 4th down. And after a deep ball by Teddy to DJ Moore fell incomplete on the ensuing third down for Carolina, Washington's coaches had seen enough of Haskins and put in Taylor Heineke, who they just elevated from the practice squad the week prior, and he took the offense right down the field before a holding call forced them to heave one into the end zone on 4th and forever. But after the defense forced another 3 and out, he cashed in on a second chance with a 29-yard touchdown to J.D. McKissick, who turned up the sideline on a secondary route. Yet, with DJ Moore securely recovering the onside kick attempt, that would be the game. I already mentioned this, Washington could have secured the NFC East, and I believe if Heineke starts the whole game, they probably do that. And they would still do so with a win at Philly next week, but 3 of the 4 teams are now still alive in that division. And for Haskins, who got cut the day after, you know you've really messed up when you don't even get to finish your second year for a team that picked you in the first round and could have used the backup for a potential playoff run. This division might be decided by Taylor Heineke, the 4th quarterback for Washington, who wasn't even on the active roster at the start of the season. To have that next Sunday night, that's pretty crazy, and just tells you what kind of division this has been all year long. Next up, we have an AFC West battle between two teams that really had nothing to play for necessarily, but are looking to finish the year strong, with the Denver Broncos at the LA Chargers. Nasir Adderley returned the opening kickoff all the way inside the Denver 40, and the Chargers were on the board with a field goal just 2 minutes into the game, while the Broncos put together a well-balanced drive to start their day offensively, all the way inside the red zone, but then Drew Lock got back to his old ways as he extended the play and just sidearmed the throw with a defender barreling at him, which went off the hands of Deshaun Hamilton and into the ones of cornerback Chris Harris for an interception. And following an LA punt after one first down, Denver got back to the opposing 25 with a strike to Jerry Jeudy on a deep in-breaking route, but then Brandon McManus managed to bank consecutive field goals off the left upright, with an offside penalty giving him a second chance. I don't think any kicker would be able to do that on purpose. Before Mike Williams got a chunk play in a slant route on the ensuing third down for the Chargers to get to the Denver 40, and a couple of plays later, Austin Ekeler scored on a touchdown from 10 yards away off a little pick play on a flat route. And following the Broncos going 3 and out next, Jalen Guyton was wide open on the corner route for about 30 yards, where he ran off the corner with the wideout and set up another field goal for a halftime score of 13-0, as Jerry Jeudy dropped consecutive passes for Denver when they were close to midfield after that, and then the Chargers let the clock run out after almost giving it back to the visitors on a strip sack from Malik Reed. Denver made it across midfield on the first 3 drives of the second half, but only came away with 6 points on those, with an intentional grounding call on Locke stopping the initial one, then Jeudy not being able to haul in the pass at the back corner of the end zone off a great shake route, and finally hitting a 50-yarder after a couple of completions over the middle, while the Chargers went 3 and out and then added 3 of their own in between those, when Steven Anderson broke a couple of tackles and just got caught from behind at the ankles by Justin Simmons, and Denver scored 10 points over the next 2 possessions to tie the score at 16, while LA went 3 and out twice, as Locke's pass to Jeudy in a deep post was just a couple of inches too far out in front on what would have been a 78-yard touchdown, but instead it needed a laser to pin Patrick on an in-cut to convert a 4th down, and then a high point catch by Deshaun Hamilton to set up a 1-yard touchdown for Locke on the sneak, and then setting McManus up for a 52-yard kick with a little pick play to the back on 3rd and long just to get him in position. However, with 2:42 left, Austin Ekeler ripped off 2 big carries, and Herbert completed a deep out to Jalen Guyton to already get the Chargers inside the opposing 20, and even though Draymond Jones got a 3rd down sack after that, the Bolts were able to get back out in front on a 37-yard field goal by Michael Badgley with just 40 seconds left. And now with no timeouts remaining, 2 snaps later, Jerry Jeudy had another pass go off his hands on a deep post that would have already put them in field goal range, before on 4th down, Deontay Spencer came up with a diving grab off the ricochet, with Chris Harris already getting a hand on it, which they were able to spike the ball with just 1 second left, but the Hail Mary attempt was picked off by wide receiver Mike Williams, with the Chargers put back there only for that situation. Jerry Jeudy had a horrible day with at least 5 drops on his 15 targets on the day, when he could have had like 200 yards and a couple of touchdowns to win that game, because he was open all game long. Justin Herbert has now set the all-time record with 28 passing touchdowns in his phenomenal rookie season, and he might be a competent coaching staff and a healthy roster away from making this a playoff team. Let's get to another divisional game in the NFC East with the Philadelphia Eagles at the Dallas Cowboys. With Washington losing simultaneously, these 2 teams played for a chance to still win the division next week potentially, and I really felt like this Eagles squad was on the right trajectory with Jalen Hurts at the helm to make a push, and it looked like that would be the case early on in this ball game, as Philly had no issues moving the ball down the field in the opening possession to go with some help from the Cowboys defense through penalties, which was capped off with Miles Sanders running it in for a 4-yard touchdown. A big completion to Amari Cooper crossing the field deep, and a pass interference call against Michael Gallup down the field put the Cowboys at 1st and goal quickly themselves, but a Vinny Curry sack forced them to settle for 3, before Jalen Hurts launched a deep ball for Deshaun Jackson, working across the field for an 81-yard touchdown on the very next snap. However, after 3 and outs for both teams, the Cowboys really took control of this game, scoring 17 points on the next 3 drives, with a couple of touchdowns for Michael Gallup from 21 yards away in a slant where he made a man miss, and then mossing his corner from 7 yards out, with the latter one being set up by a tremendous toe-tap catch by Gallup himself, while the Eagles added a field goal in between those with a couple of big 3rd down conversions by Jalen Hurts, scrambling for one of them, and then a throw over the middle to Dallas Goedert. and they actually dodged the bullet earlier as a Boston Scott fumble was recovered with a foot out of bounds by the defender trying to bring it in. And that last Dallas touchdown gave them the first lead of the game at 20-17, which was a score at the break. And the Cowboys extended the lead a couple of minutes into the second half as Andy Dalton hit CeeDee Lamb for a 52-yard touchdown on a slot fade, or wheel route almost, with a cross release. Plus, after a quick Philly 3 and out, it was Amari Cooper's turn to make a big catch and run play as he went 70 yards on a slant route, even though it only resulted in a field goal. Yet, even though the Eagles had to punt twice from midfield after that, with the first one being set up by Jalen Hurts, launching one deep for Quez Watkins after racing up into the pocket, Darius Slay made a huge play to give them some life when he fell off the outside receiver and undercut Lamb on a seam route for an interception. However, a couple of penalties forced Philly to go for it on a 4th and 15 a minute into the fourth quarter, which didn't work out. And even though Hurts got them into opposing territory on their remaining 3 possessions, with the first 2 going inside the red zone, all of them ended in turnovers, as he was picked off by Anthony Brown trying to force a pass into the end zone on 3rd and long. Then the quarterback was called for a fumble when it looked like he cleared his knee down on review, and after the Cowboys actually kind of delivered the dagger already, with a deep ball to CeeDee Lamb drawing a flag for pass interference, and then the receiver scoring from 19 yards away on a jet sweep, Hurts was picked off once more by Trevon Diggs, trying to force something down the field at the end. The Eagles were outscored 27-3 after Fletcher Cox left the game with an injury, showing you his importance to his defense and the team as a whole. We saw 990 yards of total offense between these two teams, which was the most in the history of this rivalry. And I don't like bagging on individual players, but man, Eagles cornerback Michael Jacquet had a really rough day, allowing 7 of the 9 targets his way to be completed for 182 yards and 2 touchdowns to go along with a big pass interference penalty early on. But let's give some credit to a defensive player from the other team, as Randy Gregory recorded 1.5 sacks and forced 3 fumbles. And after everything we've been through, every team not named Philadelphia can win the NFC East in Week 17, including the Cowboys, who we've written off about 100 times already in the season. Let's stay with the theme of divisional games, as the LA Rams at the Seattle Seahawks had the NFC West on the line coming into Sunday, and that is now wrapped up by the Seahawks, and the Rams now all of a sudden could still fall out of the playoff altogether if they lose to the Cardinals next week and the Bears find a way to beat the Packers. There wasn't a lot of offense to be found in the first half of this game, as we saw 5 combined 3 and outs between these two teams, while the Rams had hit a couple of field goals through the first 25 minutes on lengthy drives with some success in the run and boot game to go up 6-3, with the Seahawks getting a couple of penalties called in this Rams secondary to set up their first field goal, after Russell Wilson was actually lucky that Darius Williams dropped a potential pick 6, I think on the second drive of the game, when he already had 2 interceptions in the prior meeting, and LA had to punt deep from their own territory later on, but a roughing the punter penalty extended that possession, and they got all the way down inside the Seattle 30, with a couple of nice creases for Darrell Henderson, before Jared Goff threw one of the worst interceptions you will ever see, just lobbing it across his body into no man's land whilst running towards the sideline, when he could have easily picked up a few yards with his legs, but instead with Quandre Diggs making that diving grab for a pick, the Hawks were able to tie the score at 6 with a 51-yard field goal of their own, after Leonard Floyd came up with a 3rd down sack. And even though Seattle got the ball one more time thanks to the Rams 3 and out, we were tied at 6 heading into the break. And on the initial 3rd down of the second half, Russ put one up for David Moore for a 45-yard gain on a double move, and then dropped it off late on the run to Carlos Hyde for another 3rd down conversion, before the quarterback took off for a 4-yard touchdown around the left edge. The Rams answered with their best drive of the day, showing great balance in that one, but even though they were set up with 1st and goal from the 1, the Seahawks defense was able to come up with a goal line stop. LA's defense could force a 3 and out thanks to a big sack for Aaron Donald, before they were lucky to pounce on the muff punt, and Jared Goff showed some toughness after that, seemingly popping the thumb on his throwing hand back in and leading his team down the field for a field goal, while the Seahawks on the next possession had a 3rd and short conversion around midfield, taken off the board by an illegal shift, which forced another punt, but even with Josh Reynolds getting to the 50 after breaking a tackle off a curl route, Jerron Reed's 2nd sack of the day forced the Rams to punt it back to Seattle, and they took the clock down to under 3 minutes with 3 straight 1st downs, and kind of put this one out of reach with a 14-yard touchdown pass to Jacob Hollister on a little pick play, while the Rams never got another 1st down. And now the status of the quarterback is in doubt, who had another really bad showing, but they don't have anybody on the roster with a single pass thrown behind them, with former Wake Forest and AAF quarterback John Wolford behind them, as they head into Week 17 in a win-and-get-in situation. Like a month ago, people were arguing if this was the best team in the NFC. That's pretty crazy when you think of it that way. And that brings us to Sunday Night Football, with the Tennessee Titans at the Green Bay Packers. This was a game of scoring runs that the Packers won in the end pretty easily. The game's opening kickoff went out of bounds, and the Packers went 60 yards in 8 plays, making it look easy, and ending with Davante Adams stretching the ball across the goal line after catching a smoke route, even though the PAT was missed. And the Titans put together a good initial drive as well, but decided against the 50-yard field goal in that snowstorm that was in Green Bay, which the punt ended in a touchback, and the Packers went right down the field again, with rookie running back A.J. Dillon getting the most extended usage time of the season, and finished off with a 20-yard touchdown to Allen Lazard on an over-route versus man coverage. But with Aaron Jones stopped short in a 2-point try, the score was 12-0 just as we started the second quarter. Before the ensuing third down for Tennessee, Donald Savage picked off Ryan Tannehill on a throw slightly behind A.J. Brown on a crossing route, where the receiver might have drifted a little too far upfield as well. Plus, after a couple of nice carries for Dillon, Aaron Rodgers laid one out in front for Adams' second touchdown. Darius Smith got a couple of sacks in the next series, first when unblocked, and then as the primary guy with a TE twist, and it looked like the Packers were about to take complete control of this game by getting into the red zone again. Plus, they even got some help from the refs by wrongly calling a defender offside on what would have been a blocked field goal that was returned inside the opposing 20. But on 4th and 3, Wyatt Ray took down Rodgers for a huge sack, which enabled Tennessee to finally get on the board with about half a minute left until the break at the end of a 10-play drive that was capped up by a 12-yard touchdown to John Smith on a corner route, making the halftime score 19-7. And the Titans cut this to a 5-point difference when they got the ball to start the second half, as they started riding Derrick Henry, and that enabled Ryan Tannehill to go 45 yards untouched for a score on a zone read with everybody following the running back. However, on the very next snap, Aaron Jones bounced out to the left side and tiptoed the sideline for a long run all the way inside the Tennessee 10, and with a quick snap and no challenge being made, only we on the broadcast saw that he actually stepped on the wide line early on in that run, and 2 snaps later, Rodgers found Davante for his 3rd touchdown, working back towards his quarterback against bracket coverage. On the ensuing Titans 3rd down, Donald Savage almost got his 2nd pick as Tannehill tried to extend the play and make something happen, but instead the Packers drove down the field in 9 plays, with H. Dillon breaking the tackle and going 30 yards for a touchdown, as Allen Lazard made the key block on the safety to give the running back the cutback lane, and all of a sudden it was a 19-point difference once again, before on the 2nd play of the 4th quarter, Tannehill threw late and off his back foot to his tight end on an out route, which Christian Kirksey was underneath pretty much the whole time and picked off, but at least the defense got the ball right back, as Malcolm Butler undercut Adams on the 3rd down, who Rodgers tried to get it to late over the middle on the run, and the Titans got all the way inside the Green Bay 10, but then on 4th and 4, Jair Alexander did a great job of knocking down a pass in front of him, and the combination of Dillon's physical running and 2 catches for Adams on a little smoke route and a fade along the sideline allowed the Packers to go 91 yards in 9 plays, with Dillon getting his 2nd touchdown of the night. And with just about 2 minutes left, the Titans even put their backup quarterback in and punted after going 3 and out, allowing Green Bay to just take a couple of knees. The Titans' lackluster pass rush could not put any pressure on Rodgers all night long, which he and Davante Adams diced them up for, as the receiver came up with 11 of 21 completions, while rookie running back A.J. Dillon finally looked like the sledgehammer that he was at Boston College, as he handled the majority of the load with a banged-up Aaron Jones, getting his first career 100-yard performance and 2 touchdowns. Tennessee had success running the ball mostly when they got the chance to, but they got themselves into a game that they didn't want to be in, and the weaker part of the offensive line, being the tackles, hurt them against those guys coming off the edges for Green Bay, as they got in too many obvious passing situations, and now they have to win at Houston next week, which in theory they should absolutely do, but they're playing against a team with nothing to lose, with an elite quarterback, and not even having their own draft pick, so that's not a factor either. Would have definitely been nice to wrap the division up, as the Colts lost their game before that, while the Packers will need to win in Chicago next week to secure the number 1 seed in the NFC, with the Seahawks looming behind them. Now finally, let's get to Monday Night Football, with the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots, the final sign really for a change of the guard in the AFC East. The Patriots got into scoring range quickly, with a couple of nice runs, and if not for Demir Bird dropping a well-designed double pass where it worked across the field, they would have had first and goal, but instead hit a field goal to start the day. Josh Allen, on the other hand, threw a couple of strikes to his rookie wideout Gabriel Davis, who was lucky on the second one that he jumped on the loose ball between 3 defenders after Jonathan Joseph punched it out, and following a couple of short catches with Devin Singletary, they tied the game up with a chip shot field goal. After that, both teams went 3 and out seemingly, as the Bills collapsed the pocket on Cam Newton on the next third down, but on the Buffalo punt, the Patriots left one of the gunners uncovered, and the Bills took advantage of it, with the upback getting it out there as quickly as he could, and they picked up another fourth down, with Allen keeping the ball around the edge, as everybody was locked in on dive action. And even though Tyron Jones and Dawson Knox both dropped passes in the end zone, an offside penalty wiped out a J.C. Jackson interception, and Zach Moss finished with a touchdown up the middle from 5 yards away. And New England answered with a 9-play, 9-yard drive themselves, with a couple of big runs for Sony Michel and J.J. Taylor, back-to-back, before Cam made a Houdini-like play where he got out of the grasp of Mario Edison and scored on a scramble from 9 yards away. However, from that point on it was all Bills, as Josh Allen threw a couple of strikes to Dawson Knox down the seams to set up a wide-open Lee Smith touchdown from 4 yards out, and after 3 and out for New England, Stephon Diggs went 50 yards on a deep crosser off a play-action Yankee concept to go up 24-9, which would be a halftime score, as Dean Marlowe killed New England's final drive with a sack, and Stephon Diggs got 2 more touchdowns in the second half, breaking the tackle after a slant route from 18 yards away, and then from 8 yards out, working across the backline of the end zone, as Allen escaped the rush and fired it to him. So after the Bills quarterback made incredible plays all game long, once again, he stayed on the bench for pretty much the entire fourth quarter, while the Bills focused more on running the ball after that, and I actually came up 3 yards short by Zach Moss to win pretty good money on a custom bet. While the Patriots only picked up 3 total first downs in the second half, only got 3 yards into opposing territory once, and Jarrett Stidham once again replaced Cam, this time already after the initial 3 and out to begin the third quarter. This is the first time a division opponent has swept the Patriots in 20 years, and this will also be the worst record since then, while the Bills have now won at least 12 games for the first time since 1993. You can argue that they have been the best team in all of football since their Week 11 bye, having outscored their opponents by an average of 17.8 points. The only concern here, slot receiver Cole Beasley and one of the better safeties in the league in Jordan Poyer both had to go to the locker room with injuries, so hopefully they are fine for the playoff run. And that's how we wrap up this penultimate week of the regular season. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, share it with a couple of friends, that would really help out. Also make sure to check out my social media outlets, which I've linked down below in the description, for my weekly breakdowns and game picks among other things. And head over to my page alonsfootballtalk.com, where I have an article up right now breaking down my 10 biggest Pro Bowl omissions. I will be back next Wednesday to recap Week 17 with several games that involve playoff implications, and at least those I will certainly break down in detail. So until then, see you later. Peace!